Dave, this is such bad advice. Hey everybody, my name is Kevin Pira. I am a certified financial planner, and today I am reacting to a Dave Ramsey clip called I'm Worth About $1.7 million. Do I really need a financial advisor? If you have any clips or any money influencers that you want me to react to, please let me know in the comment section below. And as always, this is just for fun and engagement and educational content. This is not meant to put anybody down or make someone sound smarter than somebody else. Again, this is just so we can all learn something new and have an engaging conversation. And one last note here, this video is from 5 years ago, so do take that with a bit of grain of salt. But let's go ahead and react to this clip.
I'm 45 years old, and since 2015, I've made it a priority to invest, and I've been doing self-investment. I've not received any guidance, and I think I'm doing everything right. And I'm trying to figure out whether I should now invest to get professional financial advisor. So in 2015, I started with 200,000. And currently, I have about 1.7 million with 900,000 in a brokerage account.
Well done, sir.
Thank you.
Well done. Well, the same question then applies. How much of this did you inherit?
Zero.
Okay. So you are not you're not an evil rich person who was a trust fund baby. You're just an evil rich person who saved all his money up.
So yeah, this guy's got about $900,000 in his brokerage account. The other $800,000, I believe, is in his house, his home. I'm not exactly sure where the other portion is quite yet. But yeah, this is great. I mean, he started off with like $200,000. He built that up to $900,000 just through regular investing, and that's a beautiful thing to see here.
Yeah. So I did $1,000 a month every single month since 2015, and that
amazing.
went into a Vanguard account.
I'm so proud of you. Okay, listen, there's no arguing that if you just keep doing what you keep doing, you're going to have a whole lot of money. Agreed?
Correct.
You said there's $2 million now, right?
No, 1.7.
1.7
total.
Okay.
There's some.
So when you're 52,
in
if that's sitting in a S&P 500, when you're 52, yep, on average, that's going to be 3.2. When you're 59, on average, it's going to be about 7 million. That's if you don't add anything and you just left it sitting in an S&P 500. Okay? Because at 12%, it'll double every 7 years. At 10%, it'll double every 7 years.
So a couple things here. The caller Joe was about to mention something about his employer stock, his company stock, it sounded like, before he was cut off. So maybe that's part of that net worth is coming in from there. I can't say for sure, or maybe he's counting that as his brokerage account, even though it may be like an employer-sponsored plan. It's hard to say because Dave cuts people off a lot. But back to Dave's math here. So yeah, if you have an investment, it will double every 7 years at the 10%. And the 12%, though, you really shouldn't be using this figure. So when we're talking about the S&P 500's returns historically over a relatively long period of time, it's closer to 10% before inflation. That's the geometric mean. That's what we would actually use when trying to calculate the average actual return and forecast it going forward. If you want to use that historical that type of return, he's using the arithmetic mean, which is 12%. So if we're going to make a projection going forward, you definitely don't want to use the arithmetic mean. You want to use the geometric mean, because the geometric mean is going to actually include the ups and the downs of that investment, where the arithmetic mean is not going to do that. So use 10% before inflation. After inflation, you're probably going to be around 6.5, 7, 7.5, depending on your inflation period. But so far, nothing crazy. It's awesome to hear that Joe is doing very well for himself just by simple investing on a consistent basis into the S&P 500. That's great to hear.
S&P 500's average more than that. Now, then the only question is, what would you get with a financial advisor? Because it's not like you have to have it to win. It's a predetermined fact. If you just don't drive the car off the road, you're going to be okay, right?
Yeah, and I guess the number grew so much, and when it was a smaller number, I paid the 1.5% for an ETF, and it's due with that number growing.
The only reason I would pay the 1% for management is if it gained me more than 1% above what I could have done by myself.
So the caller Joe, he mentioned paying 1.5% for an ETF when the account was smaller. I think he's trying to say that he worked with an advisor that was charging him 1.5%, like as an assets under management fee, because an ETF is going to charge you an expense ratio. So that's kind of like the baked, expense for the investment itself. And then, hopefully he wasn't working with an advisor who was charging him, 1.5%. And then they were also investing in some type of mutual fund or something that had a 1.5% fee on top of that. That's pretty egregious. But another big part here is what Dave Ramsey is talking about. I wouldn't want to work with an advisor unless they're making more in the market. This is a completely wrong way to look at working with a financial advisor, or in my case, a financial planner, because my job is to look at the bigger picture and the holistic approach to your finances, from tax planning, whether it's retirement planning. Investment management is very crucial, but there's also education planning for kids, custodial Roth IRAs. There's a ton of other things that can lead to alpha outside of can we outperform the market. And truth be told here, if you're working with an advisor who's trying to sell you on the fact that they are going to outperform the market or can outperform the market, I would run away from that advisor very quickly. When I speak with clients, I tell them I'm not trying to outperform the market. In fact, in my practice, I regularly use low cost index funds, probably very similar to the one that Joe has been using, because that's what the research has shown, that that's a really good long-term investment for most people in that risk tolerance, category. Obviously, things are different in retirement, when we have to plan things out and the risk capacity, risk, tolerance is different. But, for Joe in his 40s, it makes sense. And I'm never going to be one to push, high cost actively managed mutual funds onto somebody, because that's not what I'm about. So the question shouldn't be really more about is he going to outperform the market. In my experience, it should be more about, is this financial planner going to do enough for me to justify their fee outside of just market performance?
So I feel comfortable with my plan, but it's relatively passive.
Yeah.
I'm confident in the market. I don't need this money for the next 5 years.
So here's what I would do.
But could somebody who's more
Yeah.
active, buying and selling?
Yeah, you're not. You don't need somebody churning your account, but they just may need to have their fingers on the pulse of it, being a touch more active.
So I have met with people in the past, and they kind of tell me to do what I'm doing. It's in those times of emergencies, is a financial advisor going to be proactive and say, "Hey, Joe, I want you to sell," or "I want you to buy this," or do this?
And listen, they might, but a Smart Investor Pro is going to tell you to hold.
Yeah, a good financial planner in my eyes is not going to tell you to sell when the market is low, unless you're trying to do some type of, tax loss harvesting or something like that. I'm very much so of the opinion that long-term buy and hold is a better investment strategy than trying to pick and choose, what's going to win. It's the old saying, time in the market beats time in the market. So, no, Joe, I definitely wouldn't want somebody that's in my corner as an advisor trying to buy and sell things when the market's down. Maybe buying things, if we have some cash sitting around, maybe move things around for the buying side of things. But you definitely should not have somebody, selling off your stuff unless it's a very specific tax niche thing that they're trying to do.
Told.
If it's my guys, because that's what I'm going to do. When the market dove in March, you know what I did? Nothing. And you know what? Right now, I'm really glad.
Yeah.
Because it recovered in 57 days.
Yeah, no, that's and during that time I bought, and we had COVID relief, and I didn't pay my mortgage, but I bought $1,000 worth of mutual funds that month.
How much do you owe on your mortgage?
$235.
You need to pay that off today.
So Joe there was mentioned that he was basically buying the dip when the S&P 500 and the whole market basically came down a ton during kind of like that COVID flash crash, basically, and that's great to see. So Joe, it sounds like he doesn't need anybody in his corner when it comes to maybe the investment, sort of like talking you off a cliff. It sounds like when his account might have been down 30, 40%, which was a pretty sizable amount, obviously, for him. It sounds like he was just buying in more. So he's got a great, mindset when it comes to that. If you are somebody who does kind of need to be talked off that cliff sometimes, especially during those big moments like that COVID, 2008, all these other things, that's very crucial, because if you have an investment account like this, say it's almost 7 figures, and you sell or you make a big mistake when the market is down like that, that can be so dangerous for your long-term retirement projections and things like that. So, buy and hold, time in the market. You want to be smart about, how much risk you're taking. And so I'm glad to see Joe is doing well by himself when it comes to those things. So I naturally, as a financial planner, would be wondering, well, one, I would be wondering, why do you need a financial planner? What in his eyes is kind of worrying him? What are his concerns? And then, we would want to take a look at his other areas. It's not, like I said, it's not just about investment management. There's tax planning, estate considerations, education funding for his children. But the retirement planning in itself is going to be, a pretty big deal. But again, if he can DIY it, more power to him. And I think, somebody who's just trying to sell you on some type of investments in, when you are in low cost index funds, I don't think it's worth it in that case at all.
So even at whatever 3.5%,
I don't care.
but I'm making more in the market.
No, you're not. You need to pay your mortgage off, dude. You have no idea what it's going to do inside your brain and inside your spirit when you don't have any debt. If it was such a good idea to borrow at 3.5%, you would have already borrowed $1 million at 3.5%. But that made you perceive risk. A little 200,000 didn't. So if I'm you, I'm cleaning up your mortgage. I'd sit down with somebody, interview them. What you're looking for is something with the heart of a teacher, the heart of a teacher. And
So if I was in Joe's shoes here, I mean, I probably wouldn't pay off my mortgage here. I know Dave is always about paying off your debt, no matter what it is, no matter what the interest rate is. But truth be told, I mean, mathematically, the best thing here to do for Joe is to probably just keep that mortgage at that low rate and then putting the rest in the market, assuming he actually puts the rest in the market. If he doesn't actually do that, then maybe you should pay down the house, because then you'd be more inclined when you don't have, that cash outflow from your budget. In terms of the Smart Investor program, I can't speak on that because I'm not, part of that or anything. But if I was looking for a financial advisor, I would look for a certified financial planner, and I would also want to make sure they're a fiduciary. And then the main thing I'd also look for is a fee-only fiduciary financial planner. So I don't want to work with somebody who's trying to sell me commission products or some type of insurance products. And I certainly don't want to, have somebody working on a commission basis or anything like that. There's a lot of debate out there about, assets under management fee versus the flat fee only. If you find a good flat fee only advisor like a CFP, more power to you. I think that's great. I don't think AUM fees are like the worst thing in the world, especially if you're helping somebody with those other things. But if you have an AUM advisor and they're only just investing for you and they're not helping you with anything else, I don't think that makes sense either. But again, it's not a hill I'm willing to die on. So flat fee only people, if you can find a good one, which there plenty are good ones, more power to you.
I've got one of our Smart Investor Pros that is in my corner, and I can call him and talk to him if I want to, if I'm wondering about something, if I want to run a scenario out on something. He doesn't have to talk me off the ledge on when things are getting bad.
Well, and people like this that are in the investing world day in and day out, again, they eat, live, and breathe this. They're watching it constantly. They're going to have a good pulse on what's going on.
I mean, you can read health food magazines and articles all day long and really be healthy in your eating and really be in good shape, but a nutritionist could probably teach you something.
Right. That's great analogy.
Yeah, I actually think that's a pretty good analogy. I mean, the reality is if you're watching this video, you are probably somebody who's a bit of a personal finance nerd, or maybe you just love, the concept of investing and all these other things. And that's great. It really is. But there probably is a little bit of truth that maybe there are some things you just don't know, that someone who is doing this day in, day out, who, certified to give, and licensed to give financial advice, maybe they could help you learn something. And again, at the end of the day, that's going to be so dependent on your personal circumstances, your knowledge base, and things like that. But I think sometimes we are in a little bit of a bubble here on the personal finance side of YouTube, because you guys are probably really into personal finance. But there's a lot of people out there who, one, they probably don't have the time, or they just don't care about what the market is doing. They don't want to worry about it. So those people, they can be more, susceptible to, doing detrimental things like selling in a down market, or not doing proper tax planning, efficient investing, estate considerations, things like that. So like I say, personal finance is personal, but let's keep this video rolling here and close it out in the next few minutes here.
We're talking about him or her explaining to you, we're going to do these things with your managed account, and if they meet projections and historical data, we should outperform your S&P 500. which you can do, by the way. Lots of people do it. My portfolio outperforms the S&P 500, and I still buy some Vanguard S&P 500. I still buy some, well, Vanguard and another one too. But I mean, S&P 500 is just kind of a safe, predictable place to park money. And it is what you said. It's a passive choice because you're not having to actively try to find something and move something that's beating it. But over half the funds do not beat the S&P 500. So you can't just buy funds blindly and beat it. But you can buy funds.
So actually, I think the number is a lot higher than that. I think it's the vast majority of actively managed funds do not outperform their, associated benchmarks. And, I'm very much so in the corner that I believe in those low cost index funds, and the passively managed stuff is, in my opinion, better than especially the high fee actively managed investments. So, Dave Ramsey, he does talk a lot about this, magical portfolio that he has that outperforms the S&P 500 or the market, whatever benchmark he's comparing it to. But realistically, for most people, it is much better to stick with those low fee, low cost, passively managed funds. And I think working with anybody who's trying to push you onto the high fee stuff is probably just trying to sell you something. And I would steer clear of that.
That have a track record of beating it, watch them, manage them, and beat it. My portfolio outperforms the S&P pretty considerably, about 1.5 overall year in and year out. And it's nothing really rocket science about it. I'm just picking funds that have a history of doing that and watching to make sure they do it.
Yeah.
The amount of funds out there that outperform the S&P 500 over a long period of time, we're talking over 5 years, 10, 15, 20, is almost non-existent. Basically, it is non-existent, I think, over like 20 years. And I would also want to take a look at their expense ratios and things like that because, like I said, I think it's maybe just a few, very small handful of them out there that have done that for like 20 plus years. And then the data gets kind of muddy. So, and then we have to hope that they're going to keep doing that over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So no thanks. I'm going to stick to the low-cost index funds.
And I think, too, knowing that investing is for long term. So even Joe being 45, I think some people want like some fascinating stuff and it's interesting and it's intriguing and
Not him.
Usually the boring, but I'm just saying for the listener though, but usually the boring stuff over a long period of time
is much more profitable.
Yes, because it's predictable. You know what's happening. So
and that's him. He was that guy. His stuff is not sexy at all.
Yep.
And coming out of his own mouth, he said that. It's just steady. And it was what the other guy said, $1,000 a month for all this time. That's how I did that.
So, if I was Joe, the question is, do I really need a financial advisor? His portfolio is getting larger and, the decisions do matter more when the portfolio is larger. If he can find a good CFP, a flat fee CFP that can just take a look at anything, find those blind spots, I think that could be very helpful, especially as he gets closer to retirement, because there are going to be things that a CFP is going to be able to tell him that he probably wasn't aware of that could be like, oh, wow, this is really eye-opening. Let me do this or try this. But in terms of like investment management, those low-cost index funds are really great, and I'm 100% behind that. You might have to adjust the risk tolerance and maybe not go 100% equities when you're entering retirement, but I think what he's doing is awesome, and if he just keeps doing that, I don't think he's going to have any issues. So, if he's really worried about it, have, a pro check it out. But again, I don't think he's going to be, losing any sleep anytime soon with where he's sitting. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Again, this is just kind of like my live reaction to this, so hopefully you did find a few things beneficial here. And if you have any other content you want me to react to, please let me know as well. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.